Did you know that in 2025, thousands of families in Canada could suddenly be forced to leave their homes? New laws are shaking the foundation of immigrant life, changing everything from healthcare, education, and taxes to social benefits and legal residency rules. Families who have worked for years, built careers, and raised children may now face impossible deadlines, strict exams, and heavy fines just to stay in the country. Even minor mistakes on forms or missed documentation could lead to legal action, denial of benefits, or deportation. What does this mean for families already struggling to adapt? How will millions cope with these sweeping changes? The shocking reality of 2025 could change the future of Canada's immigrant communities forever. Number 10. Social benefits eligibility. In 2025, changes to social benefits eligibility are poised to affect immigrant families in unprecedented ways. Previously, newcomers could access essential benefits such as childcare support, healthcare subsidies, and housing assistance, which helped families stabilize as they settled in Canada. Under the new laws, eligibility may now be restricted to individuals meeting specific criteria, such as length of residence, employment history, or income thresholds. Families who once relied on these programs for basic needs may now find themselves excluded, creating a ripple effect on financial security, health, and education. The law essentially transforms vital support systems into conditional privileges that can determine whether a family can comfortably remain in Canada. The impact of this policy is particularly severe for vulnerable populations. Families with young children, elderly dependents, or members with disabilities may suddenly lose access to essential services, forcing them into difficult decisions about where to live, what healthcare they can afford, or whether both parents must work full-time to survive. Even minor errors in documentation or missed deadlines could disqualify families from receiving benefits, placing an unfair burden on those already navigating language barriers, complex bureaucracy, and financial pressures. Community organizations warn that the law disproportionately affects low-income immigrants, turning safety nets into high-stakes hurdles that can have life-altering consequences. Beyond finances, the psychological toll is significant. Parents may experience stress, anxiety, and guilt, worried about meeting their family's basic needs without reliable support. Children may feel the impact in the form of interrupted healthcare, reduced extracurricular activities, or unstable living conditions. Communities may also experience decreased cohesion as immigrant families withdraw from public programs or local engagement, fearing scrutiny or penalties. Stricter social benefits eligibility in 2025 signals a shift where access to fundamental services is no longer guaranteed but dependent on a family's ability to meet specific conditions. This creates an environment of uncertainty and fear, where even small missteps could threaten a family's stability, pushing many toward the devastating reality of forced departure and leaving families to constantly navigate the precarious balance between survival and compliance. Number 9. Tax compliance rules. In 2025, new tax compliance rules are expected to significantly impact immigrant families across Canada. While filing taxes has always been a legal requirement, the updated regulations may now make a family's residency status contingent on strict adherence to tax reporting. Minor mistakes, delays, or omissions on tax returns could be treated as serious violations, potentially putting an entire household at risk of visa revocation or forced departure. For families unfamiliar with Canada's complex tax system, or those relying on informal work arrangements, this creates a high-pressure scenario where even small errors carry enormous consequences. Taxes, which are typically routine obligations, now become gatekeepers of legal status. The challenge is particularly acute for families with multiple income streams, self-employment, or remittances sent abroad. Tracking finances across countries, reporting accurately, and ensuring timely submissions can be overwhelming, especially when combined with work and childcare responsibilities. Even a delayed payment due to administrative error or bank processing time could trigger scrutiny from immigration authorities. Financial advisors and immigrant support organizations warn that these rules disproportionately affect newcomers, who may not have the resources to hire accountants or legal experts. Families might be forced to choose between survival and compliance, juggling low-paying jobs with the complexity of Canada's tax code, all while fearing that a single mistake could jeopardize their right to remain. The emotional and societal impact is significant. Parents may experience constant anxiety, checking paperwork multiple times and living in fear of audits or penalties. Children may feel the indirect effects as parents struggle with stress, working extra hours, or cutting expenses to cover potential fines. Communities may also experience the ripple effect, with families hesitant to start businesses, report income fully, or engage in financial planning due to fear of attracting legal attention. Stricter tax compliance rules in 2025 convert a civic responsibility into a potential legal trap, where a family's future in Canada is directly tied to their ability to navigate a complex, unforgiving system. In effect, the law transforms everyday financial tasks into high-stakes challenges that could determine whether families stay or are forced to leave, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear across immigrant communities. Number 8. Language proficiency mandates. One of the most controversial changes in 2025 is the introduction of stricter language proficiency mandates for immigrants and their families. Previously, newcomers were encouraged but not always required to demonstrate advanced proficiency in English or French for residency or work permits. Under the new rules, families may be required to provide proof that every adult member meets a specific language threshold, verified through official exams or government-approved certifications. Failure to meet these standards could result in delayed applications, additional fees, or even denial of permanent residency. For many families, especially those from non-English or non-French-speaking countries, this adds a significant barrier to staying in Canada. The law disproportionately affects working-class families, refugees, and those in rural areas with limited access to language programs. Imagine a parent who works long hours in essential services, juggling multiple jobs and childcare, being expected to attend language classes or pass rigorous tests. In some cases, even minor lapses in exam scores could be used as justification for questioning a family's eligibility to remain. Critics argue that these mandates do not consider the realities of adult learning, workplace demands, or accessibility challenges. Families may also face increased financial strain, as official language tests and preparatory courses can be expensive, further complicating their ability to comply with immigration requirements. Beyond financial and logistical challenges, the emotional toll is significant. Parents may experience stress, self-doubt, and pressure while trying to meet standards that feel unattainable. Children may witness their parents struggling with tests, adding anxiety to family life. Communities also suffer when skilled, contributing immigrants are forced to leave simply because they cannot immediately demonstrate proficiency in a new language, despite years of economic or social contributions. The 2025 language proficiency mandates essentially tie a family's right to remain in Canada to their ability to quickly adapt linguistically, creating a high-stakes environment where missing a benchmark could mean separation or forced relocation. This law transforms language from a tool of integration into a potential legal obstacle that may uproot families who have already begun to call Canada home. Number 7. Education enrollment rules. In 2025, new laws may impose stricter education enrollment rules for children of immigrant families. Previously, children were automatically allowed to attend public schools once their family had valid immigration status. Under the new regulations, families may now be required to provide extensive documentation proving legal residency, consistent housing, and even parental employment stability before enrolling their children in school. For families, this introduces a new layer of uncertainty that directly impacts children's learning, social integration, and emotional well-being. Missing or incomplete documentation could delay enrollment, forcing children to miss weeks or even months of critical education. The consequences extend beyond paperwork. Families who move frequently due to housing or employment issues may find it nearly impossible to satisfy these stringent enrollment criteria. Imagine a child ready to start grade school, yet their parents must scramble to provide letters from landlords, updated tax returns, and employment verification to meet the requirements. In some cases, schools may refuse enrollment entirely until families submit all requested documents, creating long-term disruptions to a child's academic development. Lawyers warn that such policies could unintentionally penalize hard-working immigrant families who contribute to Canadian society but face bureaucratic hurdles simply due to systemic rigidity. The emotional and social impact is profound. Children forced to switch schools or face enrollment delays may struggle with anxiety, peer relationships, and educational gaps. Parents may experience ongoing stress, balancing work, legal obligations, and advocacy efforts to ensure their children can attend classes. Communities could also feel the effects as immigrant families become hesitant to engage with schools or local activities for fear of bureaucratic complications. Stricter education enrollment rules essentially turn a child's right to education into a conditional privilege, dependent on meeting highly specific administrative requirements. For many families in 2025, this law transforms what should be a secure and welcoming educational experience into a source of constant worry and potential displacement. Number 6. Health insurance requirements. In 2025, one of the most critical changes impacting immigrant families is the introduction of stricter health insurance requirements. Previously, newcomers could rely on provincial health coverage after a short waiting period, but the new laws may require continuous proof of private or public insurance throughout their stay. Failure to provide this documentation could result in denied visa renewals or even forced departures. For families, this means that something as routine as maintaining health coverage suddenly becomes a legal necessity rather than a personal choice. The stakes are high, especially for households with children, elderly relatives, or members with pre-existing medical conditions who rely on regular treatment. The financial implications are daunting. Private health insurance in Canada can be costly, particularly for families with multiple members. Some policies require upfront payments, medical screenings, and annual renewals that must be carefully documented. Missing even a single payment or failing to submit proof on time could jeopardize a family's residency status. Imagine a scenario where a parent delays submitting insurance forms because of work or school obligations, only to face a government notice threatening visa revocation. This shift places enormous pressure on immigrants, turning health coverage into both a financial and bureaucratic obstacle. Communities may also be affected as families may avoid seeking necessary medical care due to fears of missing paperwork or coverage gaps, ultimately risking their well-being. Beyond finances, the emotional burden is immense. Parents may live in constant anxiety, calculating every healthcare expense, triple-checking documents, and fearing audits. Children's access to routine checkups or vaccinations could be disrupted, affecting not just their health but their education and social life. These laws fundamentally alter the relationship between immigrants and the healthcare system, from a supportive network to a potential source of legal vulnerability. Stricter health insurance requirements in 2025 make it clear that compliance is no longer optional. Families must meticulously maintain coverage and records, or face the devastating reality of being forced to leave the country they call home. Number 5. Criminal record checks. Another area of growing concern for immigrant families in 2025 is the expansion of criminal record checks. While background verification has always been a part of the immigration process, the new laws are making these checks far more stringent and unforgiving. Even minor infractions, such as a traffic violation, missed fine, or an old misdemeanor from years ago, may now carry heavy weight during visa renewals or permanent residency applications. What once might have been overlooked as a small mistake could now trigger questions about a person's eligibility to remain in Canada. This creates a system where families feel as though they are constantly under surveillance, with every action scrutinized for potential consequences. The ripple effects of this policy are enormous. Families who have lived in Canada for years may suddenly find their future threatened over issues that seem trivial or unrelated to their contributions. Consider a parent who receives a driving ticket for speeding or a misunderstanding during a workplace incident that leads to a minor record. Under stricter checks, such events could be used as justification for a visa denial or, worse, a deportation order. Lawyers and advocacy groups argue that this approach unfairly punishes immigrants by holding them to standards that may be harsher than those applied to citizens. Instead of considering context, rehabilitation, or positive contributions, the system treats infractions as red flags that overshadow years of stability and community involvement. For families, the stress of these new laws is profound. Parents may live in constant fear of making even the smallest mistake, knowing it could ripple into consequences for their entire household. Children may watch as their parents navigate heightened anxiety around everyday activities like driving, paying bills, or handling disputes. Communities, too, may suffer as immigrants become hesitant to engage fully in public life, worried that increased visibility could invite unwanted scrutiny. Ultimately, stricter criminal record checks shift the focus from integration and contribution toward punishment and exclusion. In 2025, the law does not just protect public safety, it also creates a fragile environment where immigrant families must tread carefully, aware that even a minor misstep could threaten their future in Canada. Number 4. Employment rules. Among the most concerning changes in 2025 are the stricter employment rules attached to immigration status. For many years, temporary residents and newcomers could maintain their legal stay as long as they were actively employed or seeking work. However, under the new framework, immigrants may now be required to hold jobs only in specific approved industries or with verified employers. This means that simply losing a position, switching to a new role, or even working freelance could jeopardize an entire family's right to remain in Canada. The implications are serious. A family's stability might now hinge on the security of a single job contract. The harsh reality is that not all jobs provide long-term stability. Many immigrants are employed in seasonal work, gig economy platforms, or short-term contracts where turnover is common. These workers are essential in sectors like agriculture, caregiving, and construction, yet their employment is inherently unstable. Under stricter employment laws, an immigrant losing their position could face immediate status risks, leaving little time to find new work. Imagine a father working at a factory who gets laid off due to downsizing. Under these rules, his entire family could be forced to leave within weeks. The law does not account for the unpredictability of modern labor markets, where layoffs, automation, and company closures are frequent realities. This tightening of employment rules also creates ripple effects within immigrant communities. Families may feel pressured to remain in unsuitable or even exploitative jobs just to secure their legal stay, leading to increased workplace stress and vulnerability. Employers might exploit this dependency, knowing that workers fear losing their immigration status if they resign. The policy paints a picture where immigrants are viewed not as long-term contributors, but as temporary labor tied to rigid conditions. Ultimately, families are placed in an unfair position: risk your legal stay by pursuing better opportunities or remain trapped in uncertain employment for the sake of survival. In 2025, employment rules no longer serve as guidelines. They have become powerful levers that can decide whether families thrive in Canada or face the devastating reality of forced departure. Number 3. Housing requirements. Another significant hurdle that immigrant families may encounter in 2025 is the tightening of housing requirements. In previous years, proving an address, such as a signed rental lease or mortgage document, was often sufficient to meet immigration criteria. Now, reports suggest that applicants may need to provide more extensive housing documentation, including long-term lease contracts, proof of consistent rent payments, or ownership records. This might sound like a minor adjustment, but in the middle of Canada's housing crisis, it could become a make-or-break factor for thousands of families struggling to secure stable accommodation. With rent prices skyrocketing in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, finding affordable housing is already a challenge. Adding legal consequences makes the situation even more precarious. The law's impact becomes more pronounced when considering families who move frequently due to rising rents, job relocations, or uncooperative landlords. Many immigrants rely on short-term rentals or shared living arrangements as stepping stones toward permanent housing. Under stricter housing laws, such flexibility could be seen as instability, even though it reflects the realities of Canada's competitive real estate market. Imagine being told that your immigration status depends on showing a 12-month lease when landlords prefer offering only 6-month contracts, or worse, refusing to rent to newcomers altogether. This creates a scenario where families may face double discrimination, first from the housing market, and second from the immigration system itself. Beyond the paperwork, the human cost is enormous. Families who cannot meet housing requirements risk delayed applications, costly appeals, or even deportation orders. Parents may be forced to uproot children from schools or abandon communities they've grown attached to, all because of technicalities in housing documentation. Ironically, these laws claim to promote stability but may instead drive families into greater instability by pushing them into rushed or unsuitable housing choices. For many, the law translates into a constant fear. The roof over their heads may not only determine their comfort but also their very right to remain in the country. In 2025, housing requirements are more than bureaucratic checkboxes. They are gatekeepers of who gets to stay and who must leave. Number 2. Financial proof requirements. One of the biggest challenges families may face under Canada's 2025 immigration laws is the introduction of tougher financial proof requirements. While past regulations often asked for basic evidence of savings or income, the new rules could raise the bar significantly. Families may need to demonstrate higher minimum bank balances, consistent employment income, or even substantial emergency funds to prove they can sustain themselves without burdening public resources. This creates immense pressure on immigrants who already navigate rising housing costs, expensive childcare, and increasing food prices. For many working-class families, the difference between staying and leaving could come down to a few missing dollars in their bank account. Experts warn that these requirements disproportionately affect families in entry-level jobs or those working in industries with unpredictable hours, such as hospitality, retail, or seasonal labor. Even if these individuals are contributing actively to the Canadian economy, they may struggle to meet artificially high income thresholds. Imagine a family where both parents work multiple jobs, yet they are still asked to provide 6 months of detailed financial statements, proof of stable employment contracts, and employer-issued letters of guarantee. Any small gap in employment history could trigger doubts about their financial stability, leaving their renewal application vulnerable to rejection. This law essentially equates financial worth with human worth, placing families under a system that values paperwork over lived experience. The ripple effects of stricter financial proof laws go beyond numbers. Families facing these hurdles may experience ongoing anxiety, unsure if they can remain in the country they now call home. Parents may hesitate to invest in their children's education or long-term plans if their future remains uncertain. Communities, too, may suffer, losing hardworking members who contribute to schools, neighborhoods, and workplaces. While the law may be designed to ensure stability, its execution risks pushing away families who are already deeply integrated into Canadian society. The ultimate reality is clear: in 2025, showing enough financial proof is not just a bureaucratic task, it has become a decisive factor that can determine whether families can continue their lives in Canada or be forced to leave everything behind. Number 1. Stricter visa renewals. Canada's immigration system has always relied on a delicate balance between welcoming newcomers and ensuring policies align with national priorities. In 2025, one of the most controversial changes families may face involves stricter visa renewals. This means that individuals living in Canada on temporary permits, whether for work, study, or family sponsorship, could encounter far more demanding conditions when it is time to extend their stay. Traditionally, many families viewed the renewal process as a routine step, provided they submitted paperwork on time and complied with existing rules. However, new policy adjustments suggest that the government may now require additional documentation, stricter employment verification, and stronger proof of long-term stability. For thousands of families, this shift represents not just added stress but the very risk of displacement. Consider a family with children enrolled in a Canadian public school. Their lives, friendships, and routines may suddenly hinge on whether a renewal application is approved. If authorities demand extra proof of income, recent tax filings, or even an employer's guarantee of continued work, the process could become a barrier rather than a bridge. Families living paycheck to paycheck may struggle to satisfy such requirements, even though they contribute significantly to the Canadian economy and community life. This law also introduces heightened uncertainty. Immigration lawyers warn that shorter approval windows could leave families scrambling, sometimes with only weeks to gather updated records. A single missing form, delayed payslip, or administrative error might lead to a rejection, forcing people to leave despite years of building their lives in Canada. The human cost of such policies cannot be overstated. Behind each renewal request is a story of parents working overtime, children excelling in classrooms, and grandparents adjusting to a new culture. Yet the legal framework may treat them as temporary guests rather than long-term residents. For viewers, the key takeaway is clear: visa renewals in 2025 may no longer be predictable. Families must prepare for greater scrutiny, tighter deadlines, and the looming possibility of removal, even when they've done everything right. The sweeping 2025 laws affecting immigrant families in Canada are not just bureaucratic changes, they strike at the very heart of security, stability, and daily life. From health insurance mandates to language proficiency requirements, every aspect of life for millions of families is suddenly under scrutiny. These laws introduce high-stakes conditions where minor mistakes in documentation, missed deadlines, or even temporary lapses in compliance could have devastating consequences, including forced departure. Families must navigate a complex web of education rules, tax obligations, and social benefit eligibility, often under enormous financial and emotional pressure. For children, this uncertainty can disrupt education and social development, while adults face a continuous struggle to meet impossible requirements, all while managing jobs, household responsibilities, and mental stress. Communities feel the ripple effect as fear, anxiety, and instability begin to permeate neighborhoods, potentially changing Canada's cultural and social landscape. Experts warn that without careful planning, preparation, and awareness, countless families could find themselves trapped in a system that seems designed to challenge their very presence. Understanding these laws is not just about compliance, it's about protecting loved ones, planning ahead, and staying informed in a rapidly changing legal environment. The reality of 2025 reminds us that even in a country known for opportunity and stability, immigrant families must remain vigilant, proactive, and prepared for sudden shifts that could affect every part of their lives. Knowledge, action, and community support have never been more crucial for survival and security. If this video opened your eyes, share your thoughts in the comments, your voice matters. Check out our previous video to uncover even more shocking truths. We put immense effort into bringing these insights to you, so hit subscribe, it's just one click.